George Orwell's novel titled 1984 famously incorporated the notion of limiting thought through language called newspeak. Words or actions that violate political correctness are called politically incorrect. Political correctness is inherently progressive in its nature, whereas a term may evolve over time to best suit the specific narrative or political ideology. For example, take the term commonly used to describe an illegal alien. Yes, the politically correct in this country started to use the term illegal immigrant, feeling that the word alien was too harsh or pejorative. The term illegal immigrant then evolved into a myriad of softer, sanitized terms, some of which are migrant worker, undocumented immigrant, and unauthorized immigrant. The use of the term immigrant to describe someone who is illegally entering the United States is now widely used in the media, even though the fact that they broke our laws is largely ignored in favor of using the term deemed politically correct. How nice would it be to use the term uninvited guest? Well, to describe those that come here illegally, at the pace at which modern political correctness is evolving, that term may not be so far-fetched. Now let's look at the term formerly used to describe global warming. It is another example of changing the narrative to suit the argument or ideology. Liberals have used the theory of man-made global warming to seek rationing by the government of energy production and consumption. But what if the Earth is not warming? Then the argument, narrative, will need a new defining term. How about climate change? The term climate change is ambiguous enough to cover all the bases and can somewhat save the argument for their sake. And this is a quote. The appeal of political correctness is that it attempts to change men's souls by altering how they speak. If one sufficiently reforms language, certain thoughts become unthinkable and the world moves in the approved direction. Anthony Daniels, psychiatrist. That is the insidious nature of political correctness. It is a social experiment that we didn't sign up for, and yet we are dragged into time and time because many feel they can't speak the truth or lay out the facts because someone will be offended by your very thoughts and ideas. Political correctness is a liberal degrading of the freedom of speech, the First Amendment. It is a form of self-censorship unparalleled in modern society.
Now, it's not my intention to offend anyone. I have discovered, however, in recent years that it's very difficult to speak to a large group of people these days and not offend someone. And people walk around with their feelings on their shoulders waiting for you to say something. Did you hear that? And they can't hear anything else you say. The PC police are out in force at all times.
Among those variety of reasons, radical Islam might have been one of the reasons that the individuals took the steps that they did.
We see, say, radical Islam. I mean, I think those people who espouse a version of Islam that is not...
Are you uncomfortable attributing any of their actions to radical Islam? It sounds like...
No, I don't want to say anything negative about a religion that is not appropriate.
I'm not talking about a religion. I'm talking about radical Islam. I'm not talking about the general religion.
Right, and I'm saying that a person like Anwar Alaki, for instance, who has a version of Islam that is not consistent with the teachings of it, and who espouses a radical version.
Could radical Islam have motivated these individuals to take the steps that they did?
I certainly think that it's possible that people who espouse a radical version of Islam have had an ability to have an impact on people like Mr. Shahzad.
Okay, and could it have been the case in one of these three instances?
Could that have been the case?
Yeah, could one of these three individuals have been incited by radical Islam? Apparently you feel that they could have been.
Well, I think potentially incited by people who have a view of Islam that is inconsistent with the
Mr. A.G., it's hard to get an answer yes or no, but let me go on to my next question.
Just a few weeks ago, my good friend Wayne LaPierre, the executive director, head of the National Rifle Association, spoke pretty candidly on national television about the president's gun policies. In return, he was personally and professionally crucified for daring to speak his mind.
what are the origins of political correctness in the UK?
Well, there are two answers to that. I think the short answer is, first of all, it derives from the 1960s and from the University of California. It derived from the Berkeley campus of the University of California, and it gradually extended across entirely almost all of the Western world. I think Protestant countries are particularly susceptible to it because of the guilt complex that's inbuilt into Calvinism and Presbyterianism. And therefore this is why, although it extends to Catholic countries as well as to Protestant ones, it's more deep-seated in Northern Europe and in America and in Australia and Canada than in, for instance, France, Italy and Spain.
So are you suggesting then that it's an American phenomenon?
I think the short answer is that it is, yes, but I am led to understand that the term was first used by Trotsky in the 1920s, and it comes into early Leninist speeches as well, and it was then taken up, of course, by the Maoists as well. And so generally it is a term with a very reprehensible pedigree, and I wish people understood that a little bit better.
Regarding political correctness, how do British Conservatives deal with it?
Conservatives in the UK deal with it in several different ways. The instinctive, automatic way is to grumble about it and to laugh at it. I think this is a rather unsatisfactory way of dealing with it, because the danger of PC is that it's so ridiculous to talk about, for instance, person-holes rather than man-holes, waitrons rather than waitresses, and firefighters rather than firemen. All this sort of stuff. I mean, it's so ridiculous that the temptation is just to laugh at it and just walk away. The difficulty is that because it's so ludicrous, it makes headway. People don't take it seriously. People used to laugh at Hitler, and he made headway. He laughed his stupid little moustache and all the rest of it. The same thing happens with PC. It's a bit like a clown with a knife. It's something that's very, very sinister, but also rather comical. So the instinctive conservative reaction is to laugh at it. The instinctive reaction of conservative rank and file members is to either reject it angrily or to laugh at it. And the reaction of the conservative hierarchy is to completely accept it and go along with it in every possible way, if anything, to be more egregiously PC than their Labour opponents.
Hi, thank you. I haven't said anything yet. Okay, a couple examples first. In October 2010, 5 students at Carleton University in Ottawa were arrested by the Ottawa police on charges of trespassing. Their crime? Peacefully displaying anti-abortion posters on the university grounds without permission. It asked permission and it had been denied. The posters, showing photographs of aborted fetuses, were deemed offensive by the university administration, and the students, who were non-confrontational throughout, were ordered handcuffed and hauled away in a police van. Now, it's inconceivable that if these had been Arab students protesting an Israeli action, or queer students demonstrating for, let's say, transgender rights, it's inconceivable that they would have been treated in such a manner. Last year at the University of Toronto, for example, radical feminist students were allowed, with the police standing by, to verbally assault and physically harass young men attempting to attend a men's issues talk. And though they were caught on video for all to see, they have not been punished or even rebuked in any manner by the university administration. Such a double standard is business as usual at taxpayer-funded institutions of higher learning all across Canada. If you want to start a sport hunting club, open a men's center, defend Israel's right to exist, analyze the sanction for the killing of infidels in the Quran, or any number of other wrong activities on a Canadian university campus, good luck. Canadian universities are not in the business of debating ideas. More and more, they're in the business of declaring and enforcing what is and is not acceptable to say and think. This is often referred to as the long march through the institutions. That's a cultural Marxist phrase describing the gradual, deliberate takeover of the academy and other elite institutions. Alan Bloom, in his book, The Closing of the American Mind, it's a wonderful book, Alan Bloom describes this takeover as becoming possible because scholars and administrators lost faith that there was anything there was any intrinsic value in studying literature or history or philosophy, and came to believe that the pursuit of social justice, as they defined it, was a far more worthy goal than the pursuit of truth. And the way was paved for the transformation of the university from an institution that was at least ostensibly committed to knowledge to one overtly dedicated to social engineering and correct belief. And you can find evidence for this commitment at any university website and the kinds of things they say to promote themselves. And the result is a totalitarianism not of the jackboot, but of the rainbow flag, the sweetgrass ceremony, and the women-only safe space. Now, the reign of political correctness on university campuses has had many consequences. I can't talk about any of them in any detail. Very stringent racial and sexual harassment legislation, affirmative action hiring, all sorts of things. Most egregiously, perhaps, it has seen once legitimate academic subjects completely undermined by progressivist ideology. It has also seen the creation of entirely new subjects of study, including women's studies, black studies, queer studies, peace studies, disability studies, and so on, even fat studies apparently. These are declaredly activist programs with little content other than ideology, and they're very dangerous in my opinion. They miseducate students to feel revulsion for their country and to identify themselves as righteous victims allied with the enemies of Western culture and dedicated to its overthrow.